And we are back on the Michigan Insider, Sports Talk 1050, WTKA, the ticket online at WTKA.com. We are also live on Ticket TV as well. It's time for the MGoBlog Roundtable. We are joined this morning. You already heard them in the last segment. We bring them back again now. We say good morning to Seth Fisher and Craig Ross. Fellas, good morning. How are you?
I'm doing fine. How are you guys doing?
I'm fine up until 2025, I think. I can keep going on the trajectory I'm going. I think we're good, but we're gonna have to solve some things for 2025. That's where I'm feeling.
All right, so let's just jump right into where I don't know, where were you guys yesterday? Was it 6, 7 o'clock? I'm not even sure the specific time. We were right around the beginning of the women's basketball game. I was at Chrysler last night, and my phone just started blowing up. And I knew what it meant as soon as it started blowing up, because of course things happen when you're at games, or I know, Seth, you had a thing that you were getting ready to do, and that's what happens, right?
Dungeons and Dragons.
This morning, but now we have to work a little bit because of the news. The timing is the timing. So I guess take us to your window when it happened. Was it more of a was it I don't know, is it relief? Is it all right, it's over? Like, what was your thought process as it actually the news comes out last night?
I had vague hope, but I kind of figured, and we've been hearing from players and whatnot. I mean, Harbaugh has not been, dishonest to anybody, right, about his intentions. And Michigan was doing what they could to keep him. And I know on the Michigan side that they felt a little bit more confident recently than I think they had been for a while. I think that going into the season, there's probably zero chance, and I think that chances went up because they went after him for the Signgate stuff, which kind of, Harbaugh's a weird dude. That kind of rankled him, and I think it also maybe possibly could have softened the NFL's interest. Obviously, it didn't. Obviously, they and Brian will be here in just a second. Obviously, they this was going to happen, and he knew that this was going to happen. If it happened in 2021, I would have been upset about it. Because it happened after he won us a national championship, I feel like we got the deal. That you get an NFL coach who's a successful NFL coach to come coach your college team for 9 years. This is the deal. He wins you a national championship, he can go back to the NFL. Because who else gets this? Who else has ever had a successful NFL coach, a coach who went to the Super Bowl, come back and coach their college team for almost a decade? And he leaves the team with a lot still in place. I know we're going to have to fight him for a couple of pieces. I expect, Minter will probably leave. I hope we keep Herbert. That's going to be a discussion. But he set up the program to succeed after him. So it's not like he's leaving in 2021 where he got us to the precipice and then bails. He did it. And we will always have this year, and we should be we should be able to set ourselves up for success in the future. I wish him well, and I'm going to root for the Chargers.
Good morning, Brian.
Morning. Sorry, my kid threw up on the bus.
Oh, good deal.
So I had to go get him, which is like
I just figured
he took the news pretty hard.
I just figured you were up all night watching the Shea doubles match. Which I don't think finished till 3 a.m. But
no, I was grabbing. So if there's any snorting in the background, that's the over there.
Yeah,
it happens.
Yeah. So anyway, well, I was writing an article for a theoretical book or magazine that Seth and Brian may or may not be putting together.
Oh, we're putting it together.
Well, I've got
it's a book.
It's a book. Well, I've got 5,000 words written, and I'm just started.
That's a book in itself, right?
And so when I heard it, I mean, obviously, no one should be surprised. It's clear he wanted out of the NCAA or out from whatever and wants to go back to the pros. And I'm not sure that San Diego's necessarily, or San Angeles or whatever they are, is such a great place, to be honest. He's got his work cut out for him there. Because they're $34 million over the cap, and they've got what I consider a lot of deadwood on that roster that's going to be hard to deal with. Yeah, he's got a great quarterback, but otherwise that team has problems. And they have no fan base. But it's clear he wanted out. And what I don't know is how badly Michigan actually bungled this in terms of competing for Jim Harbaugh. What I saw was a demand or Michigan's demand for a buyout. Why? I mean, these things are offensive and stupid and pointless in the first place. And here they are demanding a buyout. And apparently, if the reporting is accurate, they were demanding a buyout. I mean, they probably changed that at the end. And the second thing was some sort of, quote, immunity provisions. Now, you'd have to see what those immunity provisions look like before you could really comment on them coherently. If they say he commits a felony that, and he's in prison and he can't coach, then I guess that would be reasonable. But otherwise, I'm not quite sure. The thing that's bothersome to me is that I'm not sure that he didn't. I mean, it looks pretty clear he wanted out anyway for some time now. But the thing that's the most bothersome for me is the failure of the regents to stand up for him in that TRO hearing. When they pulled the plug on lawyers who knew they were going to win that hearing. And when they pulled that plug, to me it was, we're not really standing up for you. And it gave the university, the regents, the athletic department minimal standing. And because they're just saying, hey, we're not going to do it. We don't care that this is outrageous. We don't care that this isn't being treated right. We ain't standing behind you. And we don't care that we're going to win, because they were going to win that TRO hearing. And so to me, it pisses me off, and it was a nail. It was a nail, the last nail. Now maybe it makes no difference because it seems that he's wanted out, and everyone should understand why an NFL job is better.
All right, we got to stop talking about like wanted out.
Yeah.
Like, it's not like he was unhappy at Michigan, but you can't win a Super Bowl at Michigan, right?
Well,
like
that's fair.
I mean, like he's interviewing every offseason with NFL teams. I don't think it's a surprise that he interviews with an NFL team after winning a national championship and actually comes to a conclusion that he wants to try to win a Super Bowl. And I said last week or a couple weeks ago that Jim Harbaugh is a unique individual in that he has been very successful at both the college and the pro levels. There's no other coach in college who has done anything in the NFL. And other than Pete Carroll, but Pete Carroll, when he was at USC, he had a failed tenure as an NFL coach in his rearview mirror.
Right.
So the number of successful in-demand NFL head coaches who have coached in college is one. His name's Jim Harbaugh. And so, people weren't coming after Nick Saban after he got Alabama running, because Nick Saban had a disastrous season and a half with the Dolphins and decided he wanted nothing more to do with the league, period. That was not how Jim Harbaugh's tenure went. He clashed with Trent Baalke and got forced out in sort of hilarious fashion, but he was in the Super Bowl. He was in 2 more NFC championship games, and he had 1 8-8 season, and they cut bait. And it's just like, there's no fixing stupid sometimes. So thank you, San Francisco. But I'm not sure that there's really anything Michigan could have done, like contract terms, whatever. The Super Bowl is an NFL thing. If he could win a Super Bowl with Michigan, he'd still be here.
Well, I probably agree with most of that, but I also think that Michigan could have done a lot better.
So
and whether they lost him or not, they could have done better.
Craig, you're getting lost in the window dressing, because at the end of the day, everything else is all just noise and window dressing. Because the report from Yahoo was a couple weeks ago that Michigan had put a big number contract in front of him, and part of that from Jim's side was he will not sign a contract that starts before mid-February. Why? Because he wanted the same out. He was looking at the NFL. Everything else, all the article from last night, all that stuff is window dressing. If Michigan could join the National Football League, then they would have done that to keep Jim Harbaugh. But Michigan cannot do that, and so they cannot offer him that.
And why not, Ira? Why can't we join the National Football League? Because we're so sick of the Big Ten. Listen, I disagree on a couple of things that Craig said here. And first of all, I absolutely do not think it's a given that Michigan was going to win the TRO. I want us to stop saying that because
No, they were going to win it.
I cannot.
I know they were going to win it.
And you're an attorney, but I know I've spoken
I know
to a lot
the
of other
people,
attorneys,
and I know the players involved.
Okay, all right.
I talked to them.
I don't want. I don't want to. I don't want to be at least on record as agreeing with that. I don't think it was.
Okay.
I don't think it was true. Michigan was not going to keep Jim Harbaugh from a good NFL deal. Now, Michigan was Harbaugh was perfectly happy to come back to Michigan if the NFL offers were like, oh, hey, we're going to want to control you and we just want your name and like, we're going to pick the GM, right? Like he had leverage because he could always go back to Michigan. It wasn't like he was, crying for a job. And I think that was the leverage that he had over Michigan. It was so great that looking at the contract details really makes no sense. To say like Michigan flubbed this would be a complete incorrect reading of what happened. What happened was
I just want to interject.
He was going to the NFL if the NFL was going to offer him the kind of opportunity that he wanted. Now, you're right that LA does not have the best NFL situation, but no coach in history has ever thought he's not the answer to all the problems that his program has.
This is the guy who walked into Stanford and walked into the Niners and was immediately successful beyond any expectations.
And San Diego.
Well,
he didn't have any scholarships and everyone else.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that your Super Bowl take isn't accurate, and I'm not saying that he wasn't going regardless, because he's clearly been interviewing for 3 years. So that's a pretty solid ground. What I am saying is Michigan should not have put a contract on the table with buyouts, with immunity clauses. I mean they're throwing shares in the way of a resolution.
He's interviewing every offseason for NFL jobs.
Correct.
Every offseason.
Agree.
At some point, there was going to be one that,
I'm not saying that's wrong.
And okay, but why are we having all these recriminations? It's Michigan had Jim Harbaugh for 9 years. They won the Big Ten 3 straight years. They won the national championship his final year. And they're set up for success in the future because they have a coach in waiting who got 3 games of experience this year. Four.
Yeah.
Who's 37, who everybody in the program loves. And they're set up much better for success than they were when Lloyd Carr left. Because Lloyd Carr left Michigan with 6 offensive linemen, and halfway through that season, people were like, why is everyone on offense a freshman? It's because there wasn't anybody else. And if you look at this roster next year, there's a couple of question marks at wide receiver and quarterback, and everything else looks pretty good to incredibly great. So I'm happy enough to send Jim Harbaugh back to the league. I think it was going to be really hard to keep him after he won the national title. And I'd rather focus on what is going to happen moving forward than whether Michigan could have kept Harbaugh, which is unknowable. And it's kind of beside the point. He's gone. Now what?
Yeah, so. Well, I agree with that. The more important issue right now is not could they have kept him, which you're probably right. I still don't like how they went about it. But you're probably right about that. But the question is, what happens now, and how do they keep as much of the coaching staff intact as they can, and that's the issue. And how do they go about retaining what seems like a pretty good culture as much as they can?
Well, it seems like Minter's gone with him, which is fine, and then J-Baugh too, which, I mean, if I was Jay Harbaugh, I would be looking at this as an opportunity to spread my wings a little bit, stay at Michigan.
Absolutely.
Do some stuff.
I mean, J-Baugh does not think, he doesn't think that way.
Well,
but he was on a recruiting trip this week. So there is a possibility that people are over-reporting Jay to the NFL with his dad, and underestimating how much Jay likes being at Michigan.
Well, and I think you'll see most of the rest of the staff, stick, because they're all college guys for the most part. I mean, Elston, Klink,
Bellamy,
Bellamy, Hart, yeah, and then Newsom will probably be the OL coach, I imagine, and they'll keep Herbert. They're not going to lose him in the NFL because NFL strength
Bruce
coaches
Feldman
are
said
not a thing.
otherwise.
Well, Bruce Feldman, I'm sorry, but Bruce Feldman is wrong.
We've
Like,
had
there's no NFL strength coach that is paid like Ben Herbert is paid.
or has a role like that. Most NFL players have their own trainers and they have their own programs. They just come and use the facilities to put it, to implement it. But yeah, the strength coach has a much different impact on a program in college and makes more money.
I would be very surprised if Herbert didn't stay. Just because you do not see NFL strength. Like, who can you name an NFL strength coach?
Yeah, that's a fairly good point.
No, but I'll tell you
who is the Lions strength coach?
Who cares? Because NFL strength coaches don't matter. I completely concede that point. The reason why I'm nervous is, one, who does Bruce Feldman talk to at Michigan? Whenever he's got his right, he's got somebody there that he knows well, and it always seems to be coming out of the workouts, right? So I think that Bruce Feldman is probably getting it from Ben Herbert.
I just don't. There's also, Henschke at Rivals is reporting that Herbert's going to come back, and honestly, I would trust, any reporter not named Chris Ballas, who has their finger on the pulse more than Bruce Feldman. No offense to Bruce Feldman, who I think is a good writer, but just like he's not embedded in Michigan.
All right, and the other concern I have is that Herbert actually has a very strong reputation in the NFL, where NFL guys come here all the time and work out with him. Remember the DJ Turner story?
Okay, but there's no role for him in the NFL. Like, he doesn't get to do what he does at Michigan in the NFL. Like, if he wants to be a freelance guy who only does NFL, I guess he could do that, but that doesn't really seem like his MO. So,
yeah,
I mean, you're projecting him into a job that does not exist. The NFL does not have a strength coach system like college does. So I would be surprised, I guess. Maybe I'll be surprised, but I would be surprised.
Yeah, I'm not saying it's happening. I'm saying I'm not going to put it at like 90% he's coming back. I would temper that a little bit.
I have a question for you guys. Can Michigan throw more money at Minner than the NFL can?
No,
I think can they? I mean, the highest.
What are you going to do? Pay him $5 million?
They have to pay him $5 or $6 million a year to be a coordinator, and that's a lot of money for a coordinator in college.
Well, I mean, how much were they going to pay Harbaugh? $12 million.
Well, this is getting back to the same thing. It's like he wants to be in the NFL. Okay,
right. Okay,
there's a job for him in the NFL. Like, you're asking Michigan to negotiate for people who do not want to be in college anymore.
Okay, I'm asking them to negotiate. If they lose, they lose. But I'm not. But what I'm asking them to do is say, "Hey, here's what we'll do for you," and then let them choose. If it's the NFL, it's the NFL. But if they were going to pay Harbaugh $12 million,
okay, but this is not something that's ever going to be public and we're ever going to know about. So you can say, yeah, they should offer him a big contract, and maybe I'm sure they will. But we don't know what the terms of that hypothetical contract are, or ever could know that. So it's kind of like, what's the point?
Well, the point is, it's what Michigan should be doing. And you may be right.
I'm sure they are.
Yeah. I think what Michigan should do is hire both Jesse Minner and Mike McDonald to be the guys who decide who their next defensive coordinator is.
Well, that's okay. They might do it for free.
Yeah, they can consult on that. Just so people that ask the question, there is the rule, the law, regulation, whatever it is. Michigan has to post a job for 7 days, but they can apply for a waiver. So we assume that waiver is going to be granted like today. And generally, the rules in place for equal opportunity employment purposes is the biggest reason why those things are posted for 7 days. And if you're about to hire the first black head coach in the history of Michigan football, I don't think you need to wait 7 days for any EOE stuff. You already qualify for that. So
I agree with that.
I'm hoping for a press conference like tomorrow. That would be my hope. And then get ready for recruiting this weekend and move forward. Isn't that the best at this stage? The best thing for the program is to announce Sharon like today or tomorrow, have a press conference, and just move forward and get as many guys locked in as possible.
I would say yes.
Yeah. And the nice thing about going to Sharon is that I don't think you're going to see what you saw at Bama. Like,
correct.
Bama's roster got raided, and with the continuity that Moore provides. And, like, honestly, Jim is kind of aloof and kind of an odd duck. And so where did the kind of unity in the program come from? Well, Biff Poggi was part of it, and I think Sharon was also a big part of it too. So, part of Michigan's breakthrough the last 3 years, I think, is Sharon Moore. And the way that this team treated each other, the way that this team just, was built on love. I don't think that came from Jim Harbaugh. No, all due respect to Jim Harbaugh, but that's not his role. That's not who he is. And I think, that emotional, not press conference, like interview at the end of the Penn State game, that's who Sharon is, wears his heart on his sleeve, just commits so much to this program. And I'm looking forward to see how he'll do. And I think he will do well. I mean, the last guy who took over for Jim Harbaugh at a college program who was an internal hire was David Shaw. And David Shaw kept that train going at Stanford a really long time before he tailed off. And he just retired, like he just lost the energy. And Sharon Moore's 37. So I don't see that happening for a long time. The bad part is the first time the University of Michigan's head coach has been younger than me. So that's a problem. We got it. Craig crossed this Rubicon a long time ago.
I crossed it before you were born.
With Langdon Lee, I think was the first one, right?
So what do you guys do on the defensive side for staff? Like, what would do you look external? Do you promote? Like, how would you kind of rank the board? What would your options be?
Just in terms of, so you need a linebacker coach.
If Minner is gone, right? You need to hire.
If Minner is gone, I want, honestly, whoever John Harbaugh tells us to hire, because that worked out pretty well the last 2 times. Just because Jim's gone doesn't mean John Harbaugh can't continue doing his solids. And they have this defensive system that has been praised by rivals and opposing coaches. And I just want continuity as much as possible there. Now, I mean, I don't want to go off the board and go to Jim Leonard or something, because I want the Ravens defense to continue. Like, I feel like that style of defense, that approach has worked wonderfully well for Michigan. They're returning a bunch of guys who are very experienced in the system, and I don't want to change anything. So whoever provides the most continuity, and I do think that does mean that, if Clinkscale is still around, he's going to be like a co-DC. And the guy that they bring in to like call the defense is also going to be a co-DC, because this is the way these titles work these days.
One of the guys that I had mentioned to Sam in the preseason, I said, if Jesse was here for just one more year, which it looks like is going to be the case, one of the guys that I mentioned had just become the defensive coordinator at UCLA because he had come from the Ravens, Danton Lynn, who is Lynn, the former NFL coach. It's his son. The problem is he just then, in this past offseason, like a month ago, he went from USC to UCLA, or from UCLA to USC. So I'm not sure he's on the table, but there are a couple of guys that people mentioned, I would not go after Wink Martindale. I think he's, I would not go after him as the guy, but someone on that tree. And there were a couple other names out there, whether they went with Wink to the Giants and they're available, or maybe still with the Ravens. So it's possible to find someone from that to bring an external guy that fits the bill that you're talking about. But there aren't a ton of names left. I think the top 2 names were McDonald and Minner, and Michigan got 3 amazing years out of those guys.
There is another Skywalker, because those guys were with Zachary Orr, who I think was recently promoted to the linebackers coach. It was like the third wheel on their, like when those guys were all trading spreadsheets as low-level staffers for the Ravens. And I think Orr went to the Jaguars for a while, and that's when he became an assistant coach. But now he's back with the Ravens. I don't know the whole story there, but I think that he was mentioned when we hired Minter. I remember his name came up because like, oh, there's a third one. So I would look into him. But that's probably the only guy on the Ravens staff right now who would come. Anthony Weaver's he's the assistant head coach. I think he's waiting for John Harbaugh's job. So I think that's the option there. But these guys know each other, and there's other people out there who run the system who've worked with them at clinics and stuff like that. Like there are groups within coaching circles who are like, okay, these are our guys. And I'm sure Minter and McDonald know somebody who would want to work with Sharon Moore, this is a plum job. Michigan's going to have the best defense in the country next year, regardless of who their defensive coordinator is. So, this is an opportunity if someone wants it out there, and I think that they have the opportunity to shoot for the moon once they get more settled in. For somebody who is looking to come and do this for 2-3 years and then take an NFL job or take a head coaching job.
I just would like as much continuity as possible. I don't know if it's been Sharon who's created the environment. He's certainly played a part in it, or if it's the coaching staff as a whole, or who it might be. But the more continuity they can have, the better. It seems like that Michigan's going to need at least 3 new people. Is that right? Minner, the linebackers coach, and
if they lose
Harbaugh
Jay, they're going to need a special teams
and Jay, so they're going to need 4. It seems like they're going to need 4 new coaches on the staff, and personally, I'd like the staff to pick them.
Who's Campbell? Is Campbell going to go with Harbaugh, or is he going to stick around and coach Jaden Davis?
There's a lot of expectation that Kirk Campbell is going to get promoted to OC.
Okay, that's what I figured.
There's a lot of conversation about that. It seems like a natural fit. He was a play caller before he got here. He called plays in the opening game when Sharon was out. He helped. I don't know exactly what the role was when Sharon was filling in as game day head coach, as Kirk kind of stepped up a little bit in the role, what that means on game day, but he filled in some of that. And we know how much JJ loved him, as he got that job. So it just seems like a natural fit.
One question I have for all of you is, you've got Jim Leonard out there on the sidelines right now. Now, I'm not saying you'd bring him in as a DC, but I mean, would he be worth interviewing? He doesn't have a coaching job. It might be a way back in. I think he's been a very successful defensive coach. I mean, what might you think about that if he's interested? I'm not saying he is. I don't know.
I got, is this a good dude concerns about Jim Leonard.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't know anything about him.
He reportedly knifed Paul Chryst in the back coming out. A guy with his pedigree, his ability to coordinate a defense. I mean, the Wisconsin's defense was hot fire when he was doing that. To be as an analyst at Illinois.
Yeah.
I'm not even getting this.
I think he's actually going to interview for the Packers defensive coordinator position because they had him as a finalist before they hired Joe Barry. They finally wised up and got rid of Joe Barry, and I think he might be on that list, on their short list, because they tried to hire him the last time, and he chose to stay at Wisconsin, probably so he could knife Chris in the back.
But yeah, just that trajectory is I'm not sure I want that guy in a college program. Like an NFL is fine, whatever. It's a business, but you got to have some heart for a college program, and I'm a little wary. I mean, I don't know the guy, obviously. I'm not entirely certain of what went down there, but just the pattern of I could go from a really good defensive coordinator to an analyst. I don't know about that.
And not an analyst at Alabama where they wrestle.
Right. He didn't even get the Nick Saban. He's working for Burt. How desperate do you got to be to call up Burt and be like, "Can I be an analyst?" That's bad.
Yeah, and that's a guy that knows him, so that's really bad. So, all right, guys, we got to sneak a break in here, so we're going to take that break right now. We will continue this conversation. I have a bigger college football picture conversation about Jim Harbaugh leaving that I want to ask you guys as well. So we're going to get to that. We're going to get to that on the other side of the break as we continue here with the MGoBlog Roundtable on the Michigan Insider here on Sports Talk 1050 WTKA. The Ticket.
Clear on radio.
All right. If I see one more person in the chat talk about Brian Kelly, I might break the chat.
Brian Kelly.
Oh my Lord.
I've seen hundreds of things. I mean, let me tell you who I've seen. Nick Saban, Urban Meyer, Bill Belichick, Pete Carroll, Mike Tomlin, and Brian Kelly.
If I see Brian, I get that that writers have to create lists, right? It's their job. Who are the top candidates? But the list should say Sharon Moore is the top and probably only candidate. But if we need to give you other names, here are a few.
Yeah.
But if you put Brian Kelly on the list, your list should be deleted. It is not even a possible. It's so remotely ridiculous. It's not even. It's so ridiculous. It's the remote.
I wonder who his agent is. His agent's done a really good job.
I think I looked it up. I think it's Trace Armstrong. Either it's coming from Trace or it's coming from LSU's AD that was probably trying to get rid of him.
But Brian, if you get a call from Trace Armstrong, you know what happened.
I will say Brian Kelly was the one coach who came out, and maybe there's something behind this. and said the Michigan stuff was, quote, the sign stealing was absurd, and that he never won or lost a game because of sign stealing, and anyone who thinks otherwise is an idiot or something like
He
that.
was probably campaigning for the job.
And I was wondering, well, maybe he's campaigning for the Michigan
Yep.
job. So,
I mean, I've had people who I know people who played for him at Grand Valley who are like, there's no way he's ever getting the Michigan job. And like they know, everyone in the state of Michigan has known for
Steve
a long
nailed it.
time.
Steve Horn nailed it.
Kelly's
Brian
never-
Kelly wants Michigan like he wants Olivia Dunn.
yeah.
That pretty much sums it up.
Yeah. So I don't know.
No, I mean, Ohio State hired Bill O'Brien to come in and fix whatever is, quote, wrong with their offense. I personally don't think there was anything wrong with their offense. I think they had C.J. Stroud and then they didn't. But I mean, the question we need to be asking is, how do you stay ahead in the metagame? Because that was a big part of the story in the Michigan-Ohio State rivalry for the last few years. We can get into this back when we're out of the break too, but I want to make sure that whatever Ohio State's doing, we're one step ahead. Whatever their offensive coordinator wants to add to their offense, we already have the exact wrong guy for him to play.
Well, in the end, though, it's still who's playing on the field. And, they just put supposedly $13 million into
we'll see
the
how
transfer portal. And
what are they getting? Who do they get? Did they get an offensive line with Julian Saying?
then they get the Downs kid from Alabama. Caleb
That's
Downs.
a big pickup.
Yeah.
That's a major pickup. But
Yeah.
Michigan just beat him.
Yeah. So I don't know, but it's clear that the guy in Body Heat, they're willing to do whatever is necessary at this point. And whatever is necessary.
They could have gotten a guy as good as Caleb Downs if they just recruited Rod Moore out of their own backyard.
Yeah.
This is what they're up against. And if they lose, if they put all this money into it and they lose to Michigan again next year, I mean, at that point, because they've had excuses for every single one of these, right? If they lose again after that, it's just you guys.
Well, it's two things that happen. If they lose again to Michigan and they don't win up the playoff, the whole deal. One, the coaching staff obviously gets taken out. Two, they're all those people that gave money to get to like 13, 14, 15 million in NIL is going to start second guessing if they need to give that kind of money to their program for NIL because it didn't work. And your wells dry up when it doesn't. Will dry at least a little bit, if not more than a little bit, unless you have oil money, because those wells never dry up. But people are going to be like, where's my return on the investment? I give you money so you win. And you can't beat Michigan. I'm not giving you money. They might give it one more go with a new coach, but you have to win when you get those investments, or those investments go away because there's no real return on that investment other than winning.
Yeah. I mean, Ohio State's good at what Ohio State does, which is they hate Michigan so much that the minute Michigan starts beating them, they will do anything in the world to fix it.
My point.
And maybe that's what's going on right now. They're not going away. Ohio State, no, I don't think the boosters are going to give up. I don't think the fans are going to stop hating. I don't think that they're going to stop wanting to be the best football team in the country. They're going to be Ohio State.
They will run out of. Eventually, they start running out of the money doesn't turn itself over. Coming back, guys, stand by. And we are back on the Michigan Insider, Sports Talk 1050, WTK, the ticket online at WTK.com. Ira Weintraub here, filling in for Sam for the second 2 hours here on this Thursday edition of the show. Sam had a prior commitment, taking his wife to a minor procedure. Hope everything goes well for Mrs. Webb. But Sam did come on for the beginning of the show, which was not originally the plan, but of course, with the news breaking last night that Jim Harbaugh is heading off to the NFL.
Thanks, Jim.
Sam joined us for the first couple hours this morning. I'm now joined by the crew of Brian, Seth, and Craig. And I wanted to ask you guys a kind of a bigger picture college football question that is involved in this Jim Harbaugh leaving. Because I contest that the last couple of weeks, losing Nick Saban and Jim Harbaugh for Nick, obviously it's retiring. For Jim, it's going to the NFL. I think it's really bad for college football, right? These are the two biggest brands that are not schools, but these are the two biggest brands and coaches in college football. The average fan can't necessarily pick Kirby Smart out of a lineup. He's a great coach. He's won 2 championships, but the voices, the biggest names in college football are gone. Do you think it's maybe kind of not a good thing at the moment for college football? It's good to have these big brands pushing the envelope and guys like Jim saying, pay the players, or Nick saying whatever his nonsense that he says.
Well,
I have no problem with it.
I think college football will change this coming year. In some ways, perhaps this last year was the last championship. Because starting next year, you've got as opposed to regional titans squaring off, you could be playing the team next door. You could be playing a team 3 times in a year. You can lose 2 or 3 games and win a national championship. That's not impossible. So things will change, but in terms of the personalities, well, there'll always be personalities in college football. I have a feeling, and I'm not sure that them going makes that much of a difference on that end.
Who moves the needle for the average sport fan? For the clickbaiters out there, who moves the needle? Because those are the 2 guys that move the needle more than anybody else in the sport.
I think this is a problem for sports writers, and I think this is a meta question. I think that this is coming from people who they're worried that they don't have a name they could stick on the top of a headline and be sure of getting clicks. And now, I mean, this is not a problem for us. Right? You're asking the wrong guys, because MGoBlog readers, we could have Brady Hoke coaching the team and they're still going to be reading this site.
Yeah.
Yeah, don't put that on us. It's not a thought I like.
All right, so guys, as we wrap up the football part of the conversation, we will, of course, continue to follow this along. I'm guessing by the time you guys join us for this segment next week, we will have a lot more finality when it comes to what the Michigan football staff looks like, because we're in a momentary limbo land while we wait for the
maybe
news. We better be. Is that better?
Yeah, we better be. Yeah,
we better be in that point. So let's shift gears. We've promised a lot of opportunities, and we haven't had a chance to get to it here on the show. So let's talk a little bit about the hockey team, Brian, Seth, and Craig. It looked like through about a game and a half over the weekend that we were going to be talking about an awesome hockey weekend. I don't know what happened in the second half of that Michigan State game, or the back end of it. But as we are now in the beginning part of the second half of the season, Brian, why don't you for those fans that haven't had a chance to really watch a lot of Michigan hockey because we've been so focused on football, where do things stand right now with the team that just finished that split with Michigan State?
Well, they're pretty. I mean, they. I mean, that's just kind of how it is, right?
Well, I've been maybe paying more attention than most of Michigan hockey, and they went into Munn on Friday and just demolished Michigan State. Yeah. Michigan State has a really good team. They were number 3 in the country as of that moment, and it was just a complete demolition.
Well, they outshot them like 19-7 in the first period on Saturday too.
On Saturday, yeah, and it was 1-1 at the end of the period. It should have been about 4-1. And Augustine, their goalie, who was a commit at one point, played just tremendous hockey for them. And then it's 4-1 with shots being 30-9. With 9 minutes into the or 11 minutes into the second period. It looks the same as it did Friday night. And then bizarrely, defensemen decided they could just be careless with the puck and pass it in front of into Michigan State guys in front of the Michigan net. And in a 7-minute span or 5-minute span, maybe, they gave up 4 goals. And 3 of them were grotesque defensive mistakes by, in one case, a very experienced defenseman. And it's mystifying because we've seen it happen a lot. This is a good Michigan hockey team. They've got a lot of offense. I think they score as much as anyone in the country, with the possible exception of Denver. And the goaltending has been not A level, but it's been okay. Barczewski has been okay. He's a competent goalie. That's worked out better than I thought it would. But they have like these mysterious brownouts where they just on Saturday night for a 5-minute period just made mistakes that made no sense, and then they panicked. End up losing the game 7-5. Sorry, I'm sorry.
They've lost a lot of games right at the end too. So
Yeah.
the story of the first half was they'd like win on Friday night, and then on Saturday night they'd be up
3-1. Yeah.
and then they'd
Mhm.
lose the game,
Yeah.
usually in the last 5 minutes. So, I mean, they're talented, but they're also not what they were last year because they didn't really bring in anyone to replace an Adam Fantilli, and that's because of the fiasco that was the hiring process for Brandon Nerado. This recruiting class doesn't really have a dude in it, so they're not as talented as they were, so they can't outrun their mistakes as well. They're 14th in the pairwise, which is like right on the bubble.
Right.
They'd be on the right side of it if the season ended today. And usually teams like Michigan do improve more than older teams do, just because they are younger and they're adapting to college hockey. So I'm getting into the tournament this year and seeing what happens is, I think, a good goal. And they'll have to. I mean, the thing about this league is it's just brutal because Wisconsin got off the mat. They're 4th in pairwise. Michigan State got off the mat. So you got Wisconsin, Minnesota, Michigan State, Michigan, all in the top 14 in pairwise. And then, I mean, Ohio State's not very good this year. Neither is Notre Dame. But there's not like just a free win in this schedule. So it's the current edition of Big Ten hockey is just like no weekends off, and a team like Michigan that is not quite as talented as they usually are is scuffling a little bit. But I hope that they're able to get through these periods of just kind of madness and settle down and have a stretch run that positions them well for the postseason.
It's pretty remarkable. The Big Ten a couple of years ago or a few years ago wasn't very good in hockey, and now the Big Ten is a grueling night in and night out, weekend in, weekend out kind of deal.
That's true.
2 years ago, where would this Jeff Jackson Notre Dame team finish in the Big Ten?
I don't know. So
yeah,
I mean, Ohio State is pretty down, but even they still have Treelor and they have like guys who can play. So there's nobody in the league that's, I think, lower than 30th in pairwise. So it's just there's a lot of good teams, a couple average teams, no bad teams. So it's tough. It's a tough environment. So you always got to take that into consideration, which is why.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that assessment. And the thing I'm happy about with Michigan hockey is you can see the way forward for them. Not this year, next year. I think they have a good coaching staff. They're young, they're smart, they're into analytics. I think they really know what they're doing. They've had some problems this year that seem inexplicable to me at times, but hockey is a weird game. The puck doesn't always, bounce like you think you would like it to, or in ways that are favorable. And so, but I think the program is in good shape, and I think they have a very good chance of making the NCAA tournament again this year. And once you're in the NCAA tournament, it's all randomness anyway on these one game.
Well, I'm bringing my daughter both nights to this weekend because she's been after me.
Wisconsin,
she's been after me, and I want to hear Yost loud because I need to convert that kid. She's already there. She told Jace Howard that hockey is her favorite sport when he asked her what her favorite team at Michigan is. So, or she's already there. But I just want to sell this thing. I want it. I want to lock down forever. So big recruiting weekend, hockey fans. Let's make it loud.
All right, guys. I'm going to bring this back to football as we continue here with the roundtable on the Michigan Insider Sports Talk 1050 WTK. The ticket online at WTK.com. I happen to just get this press release in the last 5 minutes. And I get all these random press releases all the time. You see on tweets from people saying, "Oh, these are the latest odds on this." That was because we all get all these press releases all the time. So we happen to just get a press release that has 30 names on the list for who could be Michigan's next head coach. 30 names is ridiculous.
Yeah.
But at least they have it right at the top because they have Sharon Moore at 1-7 odds at -700. I don't have ever seen a list of an odds that has something so glaringly obvious at the top. Unfortunately, Leipold at 6-1 and then Brian Kelly at 7-1. I would just at that point the list is just moot because Brian Kelly at 7-1 is just taking somebody's money if somebody actually bet on that. that paying like $1 to win like 20 cents or something if you bet on Sharon to get the job.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Free money.
Like, shows you where people are actually they're paying it. At least some people are, at least Vegas, they were actually paying attention. And hopefully this will all happen in the next couple of can it happen in the next hour or so? That would be nice to have this thing. Are there any other names that you would even look at to bring this conversation back? Because I know people keep asking. If it wasn't Sharon for some reason, are there any other viable outside candidate names you even look at?
Outside,
No.
I could see I could see them trying something like co-head coaches with Minner and Sharon. Now, I think that's never been done. It may be impossible.
You want Ward Manuel to have an original idea? Come on.
But I mean, you could do something like that. I mean, it doesn't seem impossible if the two of them would come together and say, yeah, we'll do that. And that might be fun but I don't think that's happening. But
Sharon Moore is going to be the head coach in Michigan.
I think so, and I hope
20
so.
cents from Vegas.
Yeah, I think and hope so.
Have a press conference tomorrow. Isn't this weekend? They can recruit this weekend, right? Can't they have kids on campus and whatnot? So you got to get this settled as soon as possible. At the stage, you have to turn the page. I understand while we were in limbo land and you're on the NFL's clock and it is kind of what it is. But now that you're on your own clock, I guess how quickly to get the waiver.
What Moore should do is pick his favorite target in the class that's coming up. Be at that kid's house when the news comes.
That's clever.
Yeah. Be the first guy that he visits. Yeah, not a bad one. All right, we just have a couple minutes left. I know this is a college show, but I am curious your opinions and your predictions. Particular Seth, Craig, and Brian, if you want to give one, you can. If you don't, I'll leave it up to you. But I'm curious your thoughts on the games on Sunday. You have the AFC and NFC championship games, in particular the Lions playing out in San Francisco. Who's going to the Super Bowl, Craig?
It's sad to say, but it's going to be San Francisco. But I think I will probably take the Lions, and if the line is still 7, I'll take the 7 points because I think it's going to be a close-ish game. But I think it's probably the end for the Lions.
My goodness, are you kidding me?
I can't believe the line is 7 points. It seems ridiculous to me. Like, this seems a pretty even matchup. I think that everyone's looking at the last at the last drive by San Francisco's quarterback, whose name all of a sudden
Brock Purdy.
Thank you, Brock Purdy. Yeah, I won't really lose that one. Everyone's looking at Brock Purdy's last drive and forgetting that the rest of the game he was terrible. And Goff's been playing well. The Lions' offensive line is finally healthy. When they were struggling this year, that was really the only issue. And San Francisco's got a lot of weapons, but Debo's hurt. I don't know if he's going to be 100%. So I think the Lions are gonna upset in San Francisco forward down the field.
And who are they playing in the Super Bowl?
Oh, they're playing the Chiefs because the NFL loves the Chiefs. They'll find some way to.
I've had a lot of people come to me in the last 48 hours or so and say, you realize that the NFL wants the Chiefs and Taylor Swift in the Super Bowl, so the Ravens have no chance. So,
my daughter's going to really have a hard time picking between the Lions and Taylor Swift.
Are you kidding? My kid, we asked my kid who she's rooting for in the game on Sunday, and she didn't say the Ravens. So she's gonna have a problem getting fed on Sunday in my house.
My kid actually told me if the Lions play the Chiefs, that she might have to root for the Chiefs.
I mean, she can root for whoever she wants. It's a matter of if she's getting fed or driven around or not. That's the other thing. So, Brian,
we are never ever getting back together.
Say what?
On the game on Sunday.
So on Sundays, I work for you, the reader. So I don't know anything about the NFL.
There you go. Great answer, Brian. Brian Cook, appreciate it. Guys.
Less Taylor Swift, more Hutchinson sisters.
That would be nice. There you go. All right, guys. Appreciate your time as always. At this time next week, let's hope we are talking about a completed Michigan staff, recruiting momentum back, and all that kind of good stuff, and the Lions and the Ravens going to the Super Bowl. That would make for a fun conversation next week. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Thanks.
And thanks to everybody for listening. This has been the Michigan Insider on Sports Talk 1050 WTKA, Ann Arbor, a Cumulus station.